ChalkZone is one of those odd Nickelodeon shows that aired during the early 2000s that most people online should know about. However, for anyone who might need a bit of a refresher, then here you go. ChalkZone is about a young boy by the name of Rudy who comes across a piece of magic chalk that takes him to an alternate world inside of a chalkboard by the name of ChalkZone. Once in ChalkZone, he and a girl by the name of Penny go into the zone and have various adventures and the like with a ChalkZone resident and their best friend by the name of Snap. What honestly makes this show rather unique is the random songs and music videos that come up during the show, practically making it a bit of a musical in the process. Regardless of whether or not you enjoy the show, you can't deny that the show has a lasting impact on people's childhoods and was certainly an extremely creative show. With that all said and done, there is supposedly a lost piece of media that to this very day has yet to actually be acquired by anyone outside of the studio. This particular lost episode is from the show ChalkZone entitled The Broken Chalk. While little is known about this specific episode, it's specified that this episode was going to either be the last episode of the show in the form of a two-part movie, or was simply just an episode of the final season. Whether or not this was all going to wrap everything up in the lore of ChalkZone is something that is rather debatable to most people, as very little information has yet to be leaked out of this specific episode. Despite that, it's still debated as to why this episode was never aired, and this is ultimately where I come into the picture. For anybody wondering, no, I don't actually have the episode. Hell, I don't even think that the episode was ever even animated, much less completed. So the likely chances of me ever finding a clip or such is practically next to none. Not to mention that, if any clips or animation of the episode do exist, then it's likely that the episode in question is probably locked away at Nickelodeon Studios itself, or honestly anywhere that they could hide these kind of things. Where exactly, I don't know for a fact. Still though, when I had first heard about this episode via a few Ask Reddit posts on Reddit, I was determined to try and find as much information about the episode as I possibly could. This information, the searcher information, wound up leading me to a user by the name of r/squishedmarshmallow6. Now, while I cannot confirm for an absolute fact that what this guy told me is completely true, this may possibly be the only kind of proper description of the episode that anyone has actually seen. Now, from what I've been told, this user had actually knew a couple of the higher-ups at Nickelodeon Studios, and because of this, he was able to talk with one of them. Once a conversation had ended between the two, there was a bit of an email exchange where the higher-ups had sent him a PDF copy of the ChalkZone script that held the episode The Broken Chalk. This, of course, was some interesting news, and I asked him if I could get a copy of it. He, rather flatly, told me that he couldn't do that, mostly on the grounds that leaking that kind of information, regardless of how old, was supposedly an illegal offense, and he, as well as I, would actually get our asses handed to us by Viacom and other executives if we were to do that. What he could give me, however, was a bit of a summary about the episode. The episode itself would start off with the usual ChalkZone intro, and the same zany animation like usual. Once the intro ends, the scene then cuts to show the main title of the episode, and the same title card sequence, showing Rudy holding a piece of broken chalk, while a large eraser monstrosity of a creature, never really given too much of a full description about what it looked like, by the user, that loomed over him. Penny and Snap are all there cowering before the monster, and the same title of the episode above the whole thing, entitled The Broken Chalk, was shown above, written crudely in, chalk. Once the title card then fades out, the main episode would then transition from the title card to the classroom, where most of the episodes pretty much took place to begin with, where Rudy and Penny are sitting there in their desk, bored out of their minds and continuously staring at the clock, as if to pretty much wait for something. Penny then proceeds to lean into Rudy and whisper something about her being bored and wanting to go to ChalkZone to avoid the teacher's lesson. Rudy answers back and tells her that he can't just get up and make the portal in front of everybody, as it would expose the whole ChalkZone universe and get them into a lot of trouble. Penny understands this rather easily, and the two continue to listen to the boring lecture that the teacher was giving. This would go on for a bit before Penny would start seeing small pre-drawn figures popping up on the chalkboard. These figures were never exactly mentioned what they were, but they seemed to particularly say that there was danger going on in ChalkZone and that the two were needed, most likely made by Spot. Penny, now trying to get Rudy's attention, attempted to whisper out his name and point towards the chalkboard to get his attention. However, the school bell immediately rings and Rudy begins to run over towards the chalkboard at a rather fast speed, telling Penny that he had already seen the whole thing on the board while he was taking notes, and was just getting himself ready with the chalk. Then, without another word from either of them, Rudy then proceeded to use the chalk and opened up the portal to ChalkZone, and then he and Penny would wound up jumping in, and upon arrival, the scene then wind up panning out, showing ChalkZone in shambles and some parts of it on fire. This would shock both Penny and Rudy, but soon Spot would start running after them, a little bit injured, but overall still looking his normal cartoony self. He immediately is calling out Rudy's name in the process, freaking out, before tripping over on a cookie, yes, it was a cookie, and landing at Rudy's feet. Rudy would then help his friend up and then ask him what was going on. In Spot's own words, he then began to go into great detail about how ChalkZone was doomed, how everyone was going to be erased, and all that jazz. Penny would then step in and ask Spot who or what was causing this and why. Spot would then explain that he didn't really have too much of a clue as to who was doing the damage, but began saying that it was possibly a figure that he wasn't able to really see too well due to him practically running off from the thing. But he did assume that the creature was the one causing the damage. Rudy then proceeds to nod at this and then draw a large scooter, to which they all jump onto it and start riding down various parts of ChalkZone to try and find this monster. As they do, the damage to ChalkZone's towns and cities only seemed to increase in severity as they continued making their way through each and every part of the towns. That is, however, until Spot immediately starts to shake once they get into a large city-like structure. And then he winds up pointing upwards to show the creature making its way towards them. Rudy attempts to get them all out of there as quickly as possible, but instead, a large foot that resembles an eraser smashes itself right next to the others, causing them all to fly in the process. Rudy then lands next to a chalk fruit stand, where his magic chalk had probably came out of his hands and landed about a few feet before him. Just as he's about to go and grab it, the monster immediately dashes its foot against it, smashing it into tiny pieces. Rudy simply stares at this in shock, but is soon snapped out of his daze when Penny and Spot immediately grab him and start running into the other direction, away from the monster. Once they finally find a safe spot to rest, Rudy then starts asking Spot what the monster was, to which Spot apparently wound up figuring out what it was, and then proceeds to explain that it was an eraser monster. Basically, it was a monster that was a mashup of various different kinds of erasers and the like that, well, erased and destroyed everything in its path. After finally explaining the whole thing, Spot then starts freaking out again, and then begins asking Rudy what in the world they were going to do to try and save ChalkZone as well as their lives. Now, normally Rudy himself would actually have a plan at this point, but it seems that in this episode he didn't exactly have that, as he does mention that the chalk that he had been destroyed when the monster smashed it into pieces. Spot, rather nonchalantly, simply explains that they could go over to the chalk mines and get some more magic chalk. That is until, however, he realizes that the monster had destroyed that as well in the process, and that there was likely not going to be any kind of magic chalk. Penny then proceeds to start discussing another plan for the two, which began to ask how it was possible to do that without any of the magic chalk. Penny then starts to explain the whole plan to the two about using various elements and other items found in ChalkZone to try and defeat the monster, while finding another piece of magic chalk. A montage of various scenes then start to play out, showing everybody grabbing various items and the like, just needed to destroy the monster. Some of which were pretty comical, from what I was told. It's then that this guy who I had messaged about the episode had told me that this part for him was a little bit fuzzy, as it had been a while since he had seen he had read the script. So I just told him to go on ahead and skip whatever it was that didn't really know about, and cut to the part where he did know. He took a few minutes to respond, but soon went back to explaining the whole episode. It's then that everyone who had gotten the items they needed, that Rudy, Spot, and Penny began to make their way over to a lair, which was apparently the lair of the creature, called the Eraser Lair. Upon arriving, there was a huge battle between the monster and the three protagonists, who in the process began using various items to try and sit there and either daze the monster or completely defeat him, while Rudy himself started looking anywhere that he could find to get a thing of magic chalk. He does actually manage to find it, but unfortunately wasn't able to get really a whole lot done, as the others had ultimately been defeated by the monster, grabbed, and then, well, erased. No joke. Apparently, they were all practically erased. Even Penny. How she got erased was honestly, I don't even know. And even my new friend doesn't even know as well. Rudy then attempts to try and get the small slither of chalk that had apparently broken again that was stuck on a monster's foot, but fails as the monster proceeds to go down, pick him up, and then put him close to face to face. What happens next, in the small description that I was given, I'm not gonna lie, was pretty screwed up. The eraser monster then proceeds to start slowly erasing Rudy from existence. Rudy, of course, at this point is begging the monster to let him go. However, it falls on deaf ears, and sooner or later, after one final scream, Rudy is completely erased from existence. The monster simply laughs and then proceeds to go and wreak havoc on the rest of the ChalkZone residents. Then after that, it just ends. Just like that. I asked the guy if there was a lot more to this episode, or if that was the full episode that he had seen, and if that was truly the ending or not. He had told me that the script hadn't actually been fully completed, so where he stopped at was where the script stopped as well. I then asked him if he had any more information about the whole thing, and he simply said no. I then thanked him and then proceeded to log off of Reddit for the night. Afterwards, I managed to get in contact with him again, but like yesterday, he didn't have any more information. And I tried looking a little bit deeper into the episode itself, but of course, like I said before, due to the lack of information within this episode itself, I don't really have really much of a way to sit there and prove or disprove whether or not this entire thing was completely true. I'm hoping that it is, but then again though, it could have possibly just been a rumor. Maybe even a big lie that this guy probably made just to sit there and screw with me. Or at least get my hopes high enough to keep on looking for something that probably hasn't existed, or never has existed to begin with. It really does suck to know that there is a possibility of this actually being a bit of a time waste, being nothing else more but a big waste of time, but I'm still going to keep looking. I don't know whether or not I'll actually get a whole lot more information from this episode, but hopefully sooner or later, if I can actually contact the right people, I will be able to find this episode. Maybe it might take a little bit of time, maybe it might not, who knows? And if anybody else wants to help me in this little battle, or in this case, trying to find this episode, I'd be very grateful. This is a wonderful piece of archived media, and honestly, it would be a huge shame for this to be completely forgotten by everybody who's grown up with the show as a kid.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping portrait, nightmarish gore. agonizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.